Oh, hey, welcome back to my channel. As you can hear, my voice sucks. I said in the last video that I made that I had pneumonia and it messed up my voice, and that's a major reason why I haven't made videos in almost a month. So I figured, first of all, here's a disclaimer. There may be times in this video where I'm coughing, sneezing, blowing my nose, and drinking lots of water because I am still sick. The good news is, I did a white blood cell. Fuck that up. I did a white blood cell count test yesterday on this finger. Sorry if it's the middle finger. Damn it! When I laugh, I cough. Sorry about that. And according to that test, the doctors and the nurses seemed okay with that result and doesn't think that my pneumonia is being sneaky anymore. If you're wondering what I mean by that, I'm about to go into a whole story about what that is about. So, over a week ago, I had learned I had pneumonia on December 29th, and I was put on antibiotics. All right, a week goes by, and my appetite's not any better. I haven't been eating properly really since December 26th. I was lucky enough to still have an appetite on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, but it went to shit on December 26th, which is Boxing Day for some people. And anyway, in the space of a week that I've been on the antibiotics, my appetite was still the same. I was still wanting to eat soup, and the type of soup I wanted to eat was just brothy soup, nothing with any chunks of meat or anything like that. And I wasn't craving much either. I was basically forcing myself to eat a lot. And the number one thing is I still have the cough, and it didn't seem to be going away. And there would be times where I'm coughing to the point where my head would hurt. And it was still disturbing me at night when I coughed, rather than like knocking me out or doing something that would make me not cough so much so I can sleep at night. And what was there? I was still getting chills at times as well. So like a week later, after we learned that I had pneumonia, we went back to the same place where I got diagnosed. And so I did a white blood cell count test on my finger, where they draw blood to see how much white blood cells you have, as well as how much oxygen you have in your blood. And while the number went down from 158 or 159, and I think when it's 145 or 146, that's an indicator you have pneumonia. So when I was tested that first week, my number was really high. But then when they retested me a week later, while the number went down to like the 120s, there was something about the test that the doctors didn't seem to trust. Because I still have the cough, and it was still producing nasty crap that indicates that there's still an infection going on. And they could listen to my lungs and hear that something wasn't right. So even though on the test, it claimed that the pneumonia wasn't there anymore, there was still something else going on. So since this one health clinic was open in a hospital that was closed, like all the other departments were closed, including x-ray, because this was in a smaller hospital in a larger town, they sent me to Barros, which has a bigger hospital and is still open mostly, like the emergency room, and then all the x-ray and other departments are open for the most part. And they sent me there to get an x-ray. So this wasn't an emergency or anything. And so we dropped the kids off at my mother-in-law's because they were already impatient and bored from when we went to the health clinic in Huene, which is the um, large town we went to where they have that small hospital. And it was a good move we did that because I did not leave the hospital until 1:30 a.m. So we get to the hospital like around 4, and there was no wait to go to the x-ray. I went there immediately and did the x-ray. And they told me to go wait out in the ER and someone will come get me. And I think we waited for like half hour or so before anyone actually finally came to talk to me and stuff. And that was another issue I had. I kept dozing off because I was really, really tired, and I was even dozing off even in the emergency rating room because I was that tired, and but I was also on medicine too, so that could have been making me sleepy as well. But yeah, I was very tired when I had the a pneumonia at first. So finally, a nurse comes and gets me. They take my blood pressure, and they had some technical difficulties, so they had to do it 3 times. First time was low, first time was high, third time was just right. It was like the Goldilocks version of my blood pressure. And the reason why they went with the third result is because I have a history of having normal blood pressure. I rarely get high blood pressure and low blood pressure. So another thing they did was they stuck something on my ear to test the oxygen out, which is a new thing for me. If any doctor or nurse is watching this, can you explain to me why the ear? Because that is, yeah, that's a new one for me. I'm used to things on my fingers to monitor my oxygen and stuff. So he also takes my temperature. It's normal. There's no fever. So he's like, okay. And he told me what I already knew from the clinic in Huene, which is no one's trusting this result. They think that something is still there, despite what the result from this blood test said. So he also wants to take blood from the crook of my arm. Now, I have an issue with needles. I have a fear of needles. If you notice on my ear, I have no piercings and I have no tattoos because, no. No, thank you. I don't like needles. I look away when there's needles. And that's exactly what I did when he did the blood test and when the dude at the other place did the thing on my finger. So, he tells us it's going to be 40 minutes before they get the results, and that's when someone will come talk to us. Yeah, 40 minutes became 2 hours. So the nurse comes back and he says asks us if anyone has talked to us. No. And he's like, oh, I think the doctor's swamped because there's been a lot of emergencies, like a lot of critical condition emergencies. And while my pneumonia, or whatever the fuck I was dealing with, was a pain in the ass, it wasn't an emergency. I wasn't having trouble breathing. I was just coughing and then alternating between coughing and falling back to sleep. That's what I was doing. So, another 2 hours go by. So this is at 10 o'clock now. He came in at 8 o'clock. So around 10 o'clock, I wake up after I dozed off and I have a headache now. So I ring for the nurse and I say to him, my head's beginning to hurt. And here's the funny part. During that past week, when I first had pneumonia, it had been a little bit mild here in Sweden, like, or where I live in Sweden, and it was about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which sadly has become warm to me since moving here, compared to like when it's in the 20s and 30s. And so there was something that messed with my allergies around nighttime, and it's always on the dot. It's always at 10 o'clock. My nose gets stuffed up. I take nasal spray, and I take Motrin to help with the headache. And then, of course, I have the antibiotic and stuff. So I said to him, my head hurts and all this other stuff. And he's like, well, I can't do much about your nose, but I can give you something for your headache. But I'm going to take your temperature just to make sure you're okay still and not having a temperature or not having a fever at least. So he takes my temperature and I now have a fever. It's a slight fever, but it's 100 degrees and it is 38.8 degrees Celsius. And so he does a double check on my blood pressure and the oxygen coming out of my ear. And those are still normal. Even the blood pressure gave him almost a similar result as last time. At least the third try. Sorry. Excuse me. As you can see, I'm still sick. So, blood pressure and the oxygen coming out of my ear is still normal, but I have a fever now. So he gives me something from the fever, but he also puts me on an IV drip, and it would help me cool me off as well. And it felt kind of interesting because I'm beginning to feel warm, but the drip in my arm feels cool. And of course, it's a needle, and I looked away. But one thing I noticed about nurses and doctors here when they do needles, their hands and fingers are very gentle as they, do things with sticking you with a needle and all this other stuff. Like the way they soothe your skin or rub your skin distracts you a little bit. I didn't recall that being in the States, but I noticed that here. So yeah, so I get an IV drip now, and about a half hour later, we finally see the doctor, who's like, oh, your earlier results of your x-ray showed that there was no pneumonia. So there was nothing on the x-ray indicating I had pneumonia. But he was still skeptical that something wasn't right. And so, like the first doctor in Huene, this guy didn't believe what was in the results of the test and the x-ray. He still thought that something was lingering that wasn't showing up on the test. So this became almost like a real-life version of House in a way. So he says, okay, I'm going to get you another x-ray. And of course, me and my significant other both think it's a similar x-ray, but it's not an x-ray, it's a scan of my lungs, which I never had before, ironically enough. So near midnight, I go get the scan of my lungs, and they put something in my IV, and they warned me. People complain that they feel like they're wetting themselves, and they get a weird taste in their mouth during this test. I'm like, great. So we do the scan, and I'm instructed off and on during the scan to hold my breath, hold it for a certain amount of time, and then be told to release it. At the end of the scan, that's when I feel all the fun stuff. I feel the sensation like I'm wetting myself, and I feel the weird taste in my mouth. But it goes away as soon as the scan's done, and of course, you don't actually wet yourself. So I get wheeled back to my room, and it's probably like around 1 o'clock or 1:15 when we finally get the results from the scan from another doctor. And guess what they found in the scan? I had bacterial pneumonia. In other words, this thing was being sneaky by hiding from the fucking blood test from my finger and from the x-ray on my chest. If these doctors had took the results from the white blood cell count and from the first x-ray, they would have assumed that everything was fine and send me on my way without any antibiotics, or I would probably still be on antibiotics, but it wouldn't have done anything, given this thing time to get worse. So yeah, this thing was being a sneaky bastard. And I'm so thankful that they did all they can to make sure that they can find what was bothering me. So they gave me more antibiotics, but also, before I left, I was to get a throat culture, a nasal culture, and to get some antibiotics shot into my bloodstream through the IV, as well as get a prescription for new antibiotics. And I've had throat cultures before. They are the devil. But if you think that's bad, especially if you ever had a throat culture before, nothing compares to having a nasal culture. Um, the stick that they stick down your throat is also the same size as they stick up your nose. And they don't do just one nostril, they do both. And I actually struggled with that more because I've had throat cultures before. This was the first nasal culture I ever had. So when he did the first time, I pulled away because it just, the memory of it makes me cringe. So I had to hold on to my significant other's hand, and that helped me get through the nasal culture for both nasal. Give me a sec. For both nasal passages. So after that's done, I get antibiotics shot into my bloodstream, and I'm released to go to the hospital because my pneumonia is not bad enough to keep me in the hospital. It's a mild type of pneumonia. It's like walking pneumonia, a typical pneumonia, because it's a bacterial infection. Maybe mild, but it's still a pain in the ass. So, cut to 2 days after I went to the hospital. A doctor from the hospital calls me, tells me that the bacteria in my throat that's found, that is also in my lungs, well, the antibiotic they gave me on Saturday at the hospital, the prescription, is not going to work against this. It's not going to work against this bacteria. So I get a new prescription for antibiotics, and that began to work. So much so that by the time I was tested yesterday, they were all confident that this thing was finally out of my system, even though I still have a cough. But it's like a dry cough, and I don't cough all the time. I'm able to sleep at night, and I'm getting my appetite back, and I don't feel so tired during the day like I did when I went to the hospital like over a week ago. So yeah, that's my whole entire story about going to the hospital for 9 hours because they're trying to find the sneaky pneumonia. So if you like this video, hit like. If you subscribe, I'll be delighted. I'm sorry again if I sounded like shit during this, but it's been a while since I made a video, and I want to make a video for you guys and hopefully shed some light just in case you guys ever go through something and you're not sure if results from the tests are accurate or whatnot. It's good to check. It's good to trust your instincts if something's still not right, and it's better if you're a doctor and you trust your instincts that something is not right, especially if it's test results. So that's all I gotta say. So, peace out, guys. I hope you all are doing good right now. Bye-bye.